Recording. Hello and good morning. It is Talk and Tell with Holly and Kel. Welcome back to another one of our awesome episodes. We've been hanging out together each week and discussing some really tough stuff in terms of child protection, child abuse. But I am Kelly Humphries. I'm an author, speaker and survivor of child sexual abuse, and it is my mission to help kids and families by providing amazing advice, information, and just, from the heart of a survivor to share what it is that I've learned on my journey in order to protect and just support families who are struggling, or, even those of us out there who have no knowledge or understanding of what's actually going on. And so we can actually all learn together to be brave and support children and families. So I'll hand over to Holly from Safe4Kids, and she can introduce herself, and we'll get on to all things about bystander silence today.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, I'm Holly Ann Martin, Managing Director of Safe4Kids. Safe4Kids is a company based in Western Australia that teaches abuse prevention education and creates resources to help adults, both parents and teachers, have perhaps uncomfortable conversations with kids. And I'm really proud to have teamed up with Kelly. I reached out to Kelly after seeing her on Insight, and we've been doing this now for quite a few weeks, and the response that we're getting back from it is that it's really helpful. So we're really grateful to everybody that watches, and I don't know if you'll enjoy today, but hopefully you'll get some really good information from today.
Yeah, look, it's a tough topic, guys, and each week we are individually challenged on the topic that we're presenting or talking about because of sometimes our own individual experiences, or, maybe it's a disclosure that we've taken, and, we're just riding the roller coaster. And, some of this stuff we don't always have as much knowledge about as maybe perhaps other topics that we do talk about. But again, it's just our mission to bring some of these hard conversations to light. And in doing that, hopefully, if you're a survivor or a parent, you just get that bit more information in order to make more informed decisions and choices about your family and things like that. So just on today's topic, we could talk for a really, really long time about this, and there's a lot of stuff that might come up, and even for myself. And again, just before we get into anything, I should just mention as well that everything that I talk about and that Holly talks about is from our own research and experiences. It's not the opinion of any government organisation or anything. We are two individual people having a discussion about things that are important to us and to many people. But in saying that, you just need to know where we're sort of coming from. So I obviously have a personal experience of abuse. I'm an author, a speaker. I do coaching. There's lots of things that I do. But I'm still human. We're still human. We still have things that happen. And I'll just very briefly share something because it matters in terms of the bystander silence. And, I will go live on this, I promise, but just not yet. And very recently just had someone disclose to me that they may not have seen something happen to me much earlier than my initial abuse. Okay. And that person was silenced. Okay. Had that been different, things may have turned out differently for me. So without going too much into it right now, I'm quite angry and a little bit upset about these things, which is why I won't get into depth about it. But it also, how do I say this? It makes this so important because it's happening everywhere, and it's not just the theme in my life right now. It's the theme in lots and lots of people's lives who are starting to learn that they have a voice. And so I am constantly getting inboxes saying, why didn't my parents protect me? Why didn't, that teacher say something when I said this? Or why didn't that, carer, guardian, the babysitter, whatever it was, why didn't they say something when they saw what my dad did or what, my coach did, whatever it is, and whoever that person was that was an abuser to you as a child, Why didn't they say something? Why didn't they do something? Why did they help it happen? You know, so all these questions are coming to me, and not as blunt as that. This is full-blown abuse of some of the worst kind, that, you know, things that even make me cry and cringe. And I think, man, how can this possibly be still happening? And it does, because that's unfortunately the cruelty of this world. You know, there's good and beautiful things too, and sometimes forget that when we've, you know, lived in some really dark spaces. But this topic is going to bring up a lot for a lot of people, and I'm not going to apologize for that, but I am just going to say that you're not alone, because this is, you know, my experience as well. And I get it. Holly gets it. You know, we take disclosures all the time.
Well, yeah, Kelly, and also because I've done a lot of work in remote Aboriginal communities, and I'm now currently mentoring 3 different organisations in India. And so the cultural, you know, then there's the culture that's keeping everybody quiet as well.
Yes.
Because it's very patriarchal. You know, girls are worth nothing in some countries. So, you know, there are so many facets to this, and why, you know, people are shutting children down and not letting them speak out and giving them a voice. So, you know, I think it might be a wake-up call for a lot of people to realise, you know, just the impact that it's having on young people, and we need to give them a voice.
Yeah. It's not just that, Holly, too. It's actually, and I might cover a bit later, but I might forget. So if I put it in now, it's good. But just what that does to the adult survivor, right? It's not just, oh, they're 5, they'll forget about it. No, they won't. They won't at all. They're 3, they're never going to remember this. Well, parts of the brain will. And so it'll be just an automatic response to, you know, a fear of abandonment or whatever it might be. So kids don't forget. Your silencing of kids becomes adults who can't speak, adults who bottle things up. And it's destructive, it's toxic. It results in very poor relationships, and by no way, in any shape or form, is it an empowering thing. Sometimes, yes, you must keep a kid quiet for a certain amount of time to keep them safe. But I always say, when you can get your child out of the situation where you are in a place of safety, you must do something about it. That is because I understand that every situation is unique. It is not always safe to speak up straight away. And you really, as you go through these situations, need to get yourself safe, so then you can make the report and take the action that you can take that's not going to put you in a worse situation. So again, there's no black and white, but all we can do is put it out there, give you what we can give you, so that you can make informed and powerful decisions to keep you and your family safe, or kids, if they hear this, that they know that they can have a voice, and there are people out there that will love and support them. So again, it's a safe space. Holly and I have absolutely no judgment towards you. And, you know, again, it could be triggering, but as I keep saying, Holly, triggers are your body's way of saying, hey, let's deal with this. And there's just something there. I can't remember what I said the other day, but it's like your body's alarm clock, and you know, it's an opportunity for you to step into a space of growth. So please don't get upset if you've got a question or you want to know more. Just again, put it in the feed. If you don't want anyone else to see that question, you can message Holly or myself, and we'll you know, bring it up without names, without, you know, identifying factors, and have a discussion about it during our live conversation at a date to be announced next week sometime. So yeah, so all things bystander silence. And bystander, Holly, can you Holly's just found a really, really good definition of what a bystander is in terms of sexual violence, because, you know, you've got bully bystanders, we sort of know what they are, but just a little bit different for this. Over to you, Holly.
A bystander is a person that witnesses boundary violation, sees a situation that a child is vulnerable, intervening.
I don't know, you sent it to me, did you? So intervening or taking preventative measures as a bystander can mean the difference between them being sexually abused or being protected from the abuse.
Thanks, Kel.
So, I mean, there's all types of bystanders, and I know, I think Holly gave an example before we started about a teacher not saying something.
Yeah, so quite often I'll have teachers at school, and you know, every department for child protection in every state is understaffed. But quite often, and because I've trained in every state and territory in Australia, quite often teachers will say to me, "Oh, but I made a report about, you know, a kid another time and nothing happened, or they didn't get back to me, so I'm not going to bother anymore." And you know, every state's got mandatory reporting, so we have to report. But you know, they think, "Oh, well, they don't get back to me. I don't know what, you know, where it ends up." But that's not, you know, that's not up for them to know that, unfortunately. But it's not a reason not to make a disclosure. And you know, still some teachers are a bit apprehensive about teaching protective behaviours because they go, "Oh, well, I'll get a disclosure, and then I'll have to go to court, and then I'll, you know." Well, actually, it's not about you. We're here to keep kids safe. So, you know, I understand that, you know, a lot of people worry about what to do if they get a disclosure. And, you know, I know we'll do an episode on what to say. Whenever I train, I always give people a script of what to say to children. But, you know, it's no reason. And what I say to teachers also is just make a call. Even if you just suspect something, if you get your early warning signs about something, act on that, because it just could be a final piece in a puzzle. So, you know, talk with your line manager. Don't just, you know, shrug it off. And, you know, if we've got time, I'd like to share a story of a young fellow up in Darwin. Well, in fact, I'll share it now because it's very quick. Young fellow in Darwin, 17 years of age, was, you know, a lifeguard at a swimming pool, and he saw this man bringing children of different nationalities to the swimming pool. Something didn't sit right with this kid. He rang the police, and sure enough, this man had embedded himself into, you know, the refugee population and was abusing the children. But that kid was not a bystander. He stepped up. His job is to stop people from drowning. But he trusted his gut and stepped up, made a report, and how many children has he saved from, you know, not being a bystander?
Yeah, that's really important. And I guess that's the thing. And it's one of the points and one of the reasons that people don't report is, one, because what if I get it wrong? What if what I see isn't what I saw?
Yeah.
You know, and in many ways, that's a similar situation to what I want to talk about later. Not today, maybe in like 2 weeks. And it doesn't matter, because what it does is starts a conversation and investigation. Police aren't going to charge someone who hasn't got enough evidence against them to be charged, right? So you have to trust that if something's not sitting right with you, make the decision. Like Holly's just given a really good example, and, you know, allow the experts who do the job to ask the questions and do the investigation. If they find the evidence, then do you know what? You've just saved 1, 10, 50, 5 million children from whatever, child exploitation, whatever it could possibly be, because you trusted your gut. So, you know, a lot of people don't want to get it wrong for many, many reasons, because they're like, you know, what about the repercussions? What's going to happen to me if I say this and I'm wrong, and then all of a sudden this brilliant person, this good person in the community is going to, you know, be under this scandal or whatever. Well, do you know what? Good people who are high-ranking officials can also be child molesters. They can also be abusers of children. And it's unfortunate, but it's also actually part of the grooming process. So, you know, it's not, again, pedophiles, molesters, child abusers, whatever you want to term people that harm kids, they don't have or wear a suit. You know, they don't fit into a particular stereotype. They're all kinds of people, and unfortunately, some of the worst offending people are high ranking, but so are some of the, you know, normal people in backyard, whatever. You can't pick it. And at the end of the day, again, you've got to trust yourself, because what's going to happen when you learn that you didn't say something and they may later be found out after 10 years or whatever, and you've been bearing the secret for however long and however many children have been harmed, you're going to wear that guilt. So, you know, that's how it is. So there's a couple of things in this. And again, I've had a lot of disclosures about parents or family members who enable the abuse or allow it to continue knowingly. That's almost like a whole other life, and it's tough and it's hard. So before I go into some things, or before we, go into some things that reasons people be silent, it should be noted, and it's different, and again, every case is individual, but where there's a couple of things, and I did a little bit of research before this, and again, I could just talk about it, but you know, it just pays to get a bit clear in my mind. My brain is a bit fuzzy today. So, but there's a lot of times mums, you know, particularly, okay, because statistically speaking, most victims are female. Okay, it's 1 in 3. There's 1 in 6 boys. So, you know, depending where you get your stats, again, it looks a little bit different. But, you know, females can be abusers too. Okay, so I never rule that out. There is lots of female abusers. Okay, but this article that I was reading about specifically talks about mothers, but it doesn't exclude fathers as well as being enablers and perpetrators in sexual violence or sexual abuse, where things aren't spoken about, or, you know, the mother might be in denial about the abuse. So let's say the child is saying, you know, mum, this has happened, it happened here, it happened there, it happened in this part of their house, and mum's like, oh, that couldn't possibly happen, your dad would never do that, or your grandfather would never do that. Like, no, it did. And, you know, there might even be, until there's photos, and there's this whole process that the parent is going through during this, you know, and you might have tried to say to your parent, you know, this is happening, and they did nothing, you know, and in your adult life, you're like, they did nothing, and I blame them, and it's their fault. And to me, it's inexcusable to ignore abuse, but there are reasons that parents or caregivers may not speak up about it. And again, it doesn't excuse that it's happened. It doesn't make it right, but it just helps us to understand why. Does that make sense, Holly? Because again, you can't for a mother to allow a child to continue to be abused knowingly. I don't think that's it's not right ever.
Well, I mean, they've just had a huge bust with, you know, mothers in the Philippines actually trafficking their children, you know, to survive. So,
Yeah.
you know, we're not here to judge people,
No,
but we
all.
just want people to understand that, you know, like you said, it's such a complex thing, and we just want to shine a light on it.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I'm trying to say. And it is, and sometimes even in Australia, believe it or not, Philippines obviously is a low socioeconomic area, but there are families below the poverty line here that have nothing. Well, again, it's the wrong choice, because, you know, they could reach out. There's lots of support services, but, you know, they will allow their child into abusive situations because it keeps food on the table. You know?
And we've had families here trafficking their children to support their ice habit, unfortunately.
Yeah. So again, it doesn't make it right, but, you know, there's reasons that this happens. And so a couple of things that came out of what I was reading this morning is that there's denial of abuse. Okay. So if there's a family, a standard family, you know, sees dad going into the daughter's bedroom, you know, continuously every night, wanting to sleep next to the child, things like that are signs. The signs are generally there in a house. But then the mother may deny that, and we go, well, how can she not know? She saw him come into my bedroom all the time. You know, she knew he was sleeping next to me. You know, thinking the best of that person, but going, well, why? And there would have been a niggling feeling. And in this particular article, it's from the Yale Law and Policy Review, and it's by Christine Adams, just so I can pop that out there. But it talks about denial being a psychological defense mechanism that the person uses to screen out the distressing reality of the painful feeling they cause. So that is the protection of the issue. So they want to be protected from knowing about the abuse. So they just say, well, it's not happening. So I don't want to know about it. It's not happening. Okay. It stops them from feeling guilty about it and being angry about it. Okay. But it also keeps people safe and doesn't make it okay, but that's the reality of what's happening in the brain's process. It talked also about the fact that at times there's also that the caregiver has had previous abuse. And so by indicating or knowledge or knowing about that abuse in the family brings back too much of the painful memories of their own trauma, that they actually don't have the capacity to support the child. So not fair, not right, but understandable in that circumstance, if that makes sense. But just a couple of other little things on that. Failing to stop the abuse, and again, every state would look at this differently. Every incident of child abuse would be looked at differently and investigated independently of one another. But failing to stop the abuse means in some cases you could be criminally liable. An act or omission, or an acts of omission, sorry. So that's where you fail to take appropriate, reasonable steps to stop the abuse, to prevent it occurring, and it can be seen that it shows the parent's consent and contribution to the crime, which could make you criminally liable or like a party to the offence. So if you know that it's happening, you're denying that it's happening, saying that's not going on, but it later gets found out upon reporting that you did know about it, you could be held criminally liable for not reporting or taking action. Okay. Then there's the part where it says when children speak about the abuse, but it's refused to be acknowledged. And it gave an example in this article, and I will share it in the feed. And it's an old article, but it's very applicable to today. And it just actually made a lot of sense when I read it. You know, a child is constantly saying, this has happened in the basement. He's done it here. He's done it there. And then showed photos of what's happened. And this parent just refused to acknowledge the possibility that this could be occurring and that this father would actually be having sexual relationships with both of her children. And then it was held up that, you know, because she had knowingly subjected the children to abuse and not acted, that she was also criminally liable. So again, every situation is different, but under no circumstances ever, if a child discloses, and Holly, you could probably help me with the stats because I'm not a numbers person, but I believe it's like 98% of children who disclose it is the actual truth. Kids don't lie.
No. And what we've, in my training that I've done and the study that I've looked at and stuff, it's that children under the age of 10 don't lie about it because they don't have the, you know, they wouldn't have the language and stuff to be able to lie about it. Children over the age of 10 may, and it's usually in a custody battle. Mum gets a new boyfriend and the child doesn't like that, but it is so minute that, you know, it's negligible. We have to believe all children.
Yes.
Because, you know, even if this child lies all the time, it's not our job. We rely on the police and the system to investigate, and then they'll get to the bottom of it. It did actually happen to a friend of mine. He was a male teacher working in a school with very disturbed children, and he told a child off and the child made these allegations. And my friend nearly had a breakdown because it was so rigorous. He was found, you know, not to be true, but that's a 1 in a million. And this was a child that really, really needed a lot of, you know, he had a lot of trauma anyway.
Yeah. It does come out in the investigation. It comes out in the investigation. Like there's techniques that police have that I can assure you that once they go through this process, they look at certain consistencies in the child's reporting. And unfortunately, some kids who actually do tell the truth can come unstuck in that process. But that's you can't trust, and the first thought can't be they're lying about this, and that's your own defense mechanism popping up. That's nothing to do with the child. The child is always going to be telling the truth.
Yeah.
Okay. There's the very rare occurrence that they aren't telling the truth. You still must report it. That is your duty. The rest of it it will come out in the process that follows. Okay, that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to report it, even if you're not sure. You don't want to miss it. Let's just put it that way.
And not to interrogate the child either, because that will taint the evidence for police. Yeah. So if a child makes a disclosure, then you need to act on that. Every state's got mandatory reporting. My state is only for teachers, police, nurses and doctors. They're changing it, but every other state, I think, is everybody's a mandatory reporter.
Yeah, and that's why I love my Child Safe Australia organisation, that I'm a child safe champion, and they empower organisations to report, and it is absolutely essential to have good processes in place. So if you don't know how to do that and you don't have a system in place to report child abuse, contact them, because they will help you with some training. So thank you, Child Safe Australia.
Nice plug.
Yeah. But look, so let's just go into some reasons bystanders don't speak up. And so the first one on my list is overwhelming feelings. So, depending on how close you are to the child, it is stuff like the fear, anger, and shame, just thinking about the abuse, right? See, I think in your family, it's so dark and taboo. It's like, that could never happen in my family. So this shame just comes over you, and you're like, I can't talk about that. Just shut down, and we're going to have a physiological response. Like, when I say that, I mean, when you get scared of something, your body reacts. You get sweaty palms, you get, your heart starts to race, and you think, oh my God, what is this? It's humanizing the response to someone saying that, your child's being abused, or your child say, hey, this is what grandpa did to me, or this is what grandma's doing to me, like whoever the abuser is. Okay, so again, we're not men haters here. Abuse happens from all genders and to all genders, and I have to be very clear about that. So,
and children and teenagers.
Correct. Peer-to-peer sexual violence as well. So, but yeah, so, and as I just mentioned earlier, the adults with their own sexual trauma, they'll often have, for example, myself, my mum had never spoken about abuse until I did, and I shared my story. Then she said that happened to me too, right? But she didn't share it with anyone. So, there's probably a lot to be said in that, but, not going back into the adults, caregivers' own trauma is another reason they won't say, I'm not going there because I can't deal with it. Shut it off. They don't have the capacity to support the child. So these statistics here, this is 1 in 3 and 1 in 6 men. So that's like 1 in 3 families. That's a lot. There's a lot of families that have got some form of child abuse knowledge or experience. Yeah, so maintaining self-protective strategies. So it's usually challenged your own protective strategy. So it basically brings shame upon yourself. So, if a child reports to you that they've been sexually abused, you think, oh, it's my fault. I'm going to get in trouble. I've done the wrong thing. You might, again, and I think Holly and I, we explained it, Holly, in our grooming, is that how cunning pedophiles are. You as a caregiver, it's very different to someone taking advantage of you and betraying you as a caregiver and tricking you and tricking your family and grooming you to have access to your child than it is for you to know that that person has access to your child and is abusing them and you don't say anything. So be very clear on the distinction here. If you have no knowledge of it, you have no knowledge of it because you're groomed as well. Okay? So those defenses, let go of the guilt before it eats at you. It's not your fault. As a parent or caregiver or teacher, whoever it is, you blame yourself because whatever, you're not to know that that's happening until the child raises their voice, then you have a responsibility. Did you want to go into the confusion part, Holly? Stereotypes and how we see people.
You've caught me on the hop, Kel.
You're right. Go for it.
So you mean the confusion that people might not know what's going on? I'm not
Yeah, there's
sure.
that too, but like just it's the stereotypes. Like we just expect that
Oh,
teachers.
that people think it's a man in a trench coat behind
Yeah, yeah,
the bus shelter. You know, there is no, you know, I wish there was. I wish there was a cookie cutter that we could say, if you see somebody with this, and this, you know, but really it could be anybody. And that's why, you know, I keep talking about children as well, because, you know, siblings are doing it and parents might not know, you know, and they think, oh, you know, my kids all love each other and stuff like that. And they may not, um, you know, see the signs there either. So, you know, that's what, again, coming back to me, it's always about me. That's why teaching abuse prevention education is so important, because a parent can't always be there. They can't, you know, and we don't want people going, oh, well, are they a perpetrator? Are they a perpetrator? We just have to be vigilant and we have to educate.
yeah, yeah. It's just, and it comes down to the fact that there's this moment where you say, and again, I'm just I'm making this up in my head, but I guarantee there'd be 100 examples of it. My basketball coach, who's also the, you know, ambassador for the Chamber of Commerce across the region, has been sexually abusing me for 15 years. Right? You're like, what? No, really? That can't be possible. So there's this moment of confusion, right? Because you're like, how could that even happen? That's not right. And so we get bamboozled in this because we have a stereotype like what Holly said, you know, some trench coat behind a bus stop. Well, that's not how it works. And so sometimes we don't think that these people who are highly respected or are just good people, maybe they're like my uncle and he's a good bloke too, you know? And you just don't possibly think that they could betray or hurt your family in such a way. So it becomes this battle in your brain to accept the fact that these people can actually do this sort of stuff to your child. So
Kelly, something that I'd recommend people do if they have Netflix is to watch the documentary made about the gymnastics in America. Now, that doctor sexually abused over 500 girls, and he was, you know, performing medical procedures on them that they thought, I mean, he was abusing them, but he was justifying it. Now, the coaches were very cruel, and again, this comes back to the grooming as well. And he was just beautiful, but you know, there would have been people that knew what was going on, but because they want their children to be the elite, get the gold at the Olympics or whatever, you know, that went on for from 95, I think it was.
is that called Athlete Eye?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we can find it, we'll add it to the comments in this video. So
yeah, it's a real eye opener, because it just shows the grooming, the pressure to succeed, all of this stuff, and the women speak so openly. And again, it may trigger some people, but it really is a very good documentary to show. And you know, and again, the other documentary that's on at the moment is, and she's just, oh, what's her name, Glenn Maxwell. You know, there were so many bystanders there, knew that these girls were being trafficked and stuff like that, but just turned a blind eye to it all.
Okay. So with all these, I haven't watched these all. I've been told to watch Athlete Eye, but not yet.
Yeah, no,
I'm supposed to wait.
Yeah.
It's hard hitting. So we'll add the links there, guys. But you know, it's up to you whether you decide to watch them or not. I'll get Holly if you can do that. That'd be good. All right. So we'll go into self-doubts. Holly, if you can help me out with this one. But it's the first thing is, and we sort of said it before, is what if I'm wrong? You know, again, that's up to the police and investigators and child safety in those places. Even though sometimes systems fail us, we have to trust that they know how to do an investigation to find out the truth in that. So, you know, and again, investigative methodologies are getting better and better all the time. So, you know, police and child safety in those organisations are learning from, you know, the past and those lessons. So what if you're wrong? I mean, it's easy to see something and think you've seen something else, but you know, again, just if something's not sitting with you right, ask yourself a few more questions. So
I know in training quite often teachers will say to me, "Or what if I'm wrong?" And my answer to that is, "But what if you're right?"
correct.
And you know, you can ring the Department of Child Protection in every state and just run it past them. You know, you don't want to be gossiping with everybody. Say it's at school on a you know, staff, or you know, the mums picking their kids up from school. You don't want to be gossiping, but you can ring and be anonymous and just run it past people at Child Protection to get some, you know, clarity on it. Because again, you know, it comes back to your gut feeling. It usually never lets you down. So
right. And the signs are always there too, Holly. Like, and we spoke about the signs of abuse in one of our very earlier episodes. We even had the clinical psychologist, the lovely Shay McGillivray, come and share with us. And some of those signs that we don't always see out in the open, but there might be behavioural things. And you'll get, by investing in more of what we're teaching, what we're sharing, you'll get a really good all-round picture of not just a physical thing, but it might be an emotional and behavioural patterns and stuff like that. And, you know, I've made this my life purpose, I guess, past my personal experience. And it's really, really sad, but really, really good gift that I have, that I can pick a child, you know, just from a couple of times, spending a bit of time with them, and be like, I know what's happened for you, sweetie. Like, I really hope you can speak up at some point, you know, and I get that. I get it in a big way. So trust your gut, because if you're a teacher or you're working in a school, you're a coach, you're going to be seeing kids all the time. You will recognize patterns of behavior. And when it's not sitting right with you, trust it. Okay. That's all we ask. So, and Holly, you just said, what if you're right? A lot of people, that's also another reason for them to be silent. Even if they're right, they think they're going to lose everything. They're going to lose their family. Again, and we're going to talk about victim silence next time we do this, so in a fortnight's time. But it's also like, I'm not going to talk up or say anything, because as a survivor myself, I'm going to break up my whole family, right? That was one of my reasons. And, you know, it's the same for a parent. They're like, oh, my whole family is going to be destroyed over this. What about the church? You know, what are they going to think? What about the organization? You know, well, you have to ask yourself, what's more important, my child's health and their life and their future life and their family's life after me? Or, you know, being part of this church or being part of this group or community group? Because these are all reasons. Are like, oh, and Holly, you said it in the beginning with the Indian community and cultural beliefs. You know, it's what your culture might believe. And, you know, we are in Australia such a multicultural nation that we carry with us the thoughts and the feelings and the practices and the cultural practices of our countries where we come from. And a lot of those things will inhibit us from speaking up. It doesn't change the violation. It doesn't change the thing that's happened. You know, and the braver we get and the more we want to align ourselves with our purpose and the things we want to do in life, the harder it is to do that, because we haven't had a voice. And so it just becomes so important to learn how to speak up and feel safe in doing that. And you've got to find a safe space to do it. Is absolutely essential. So, you know, and again, if you haven't said something about something that's happening or abuse that you know about, don't wait. Go and do it now. Get off here, stop watching, and go and make that report. You know, don't sit with that guilt, because, you know, that's a child who's going to become an adult with trauma that can actually be stopped right now. It can be stopped right now with your call, and it may not be stopped, but you can't then say, I didn't try. So, yeah. So just a couple more things just for today that we'll talk about. And, you know, one is repercussions. I mentioned before, Holly. We don't want the repercussions on our family. We don't want to be abused, yelled at, screamed, threatened, or whatever. Well,
run out of the community.
Yeah, and these things are, you know, real threats at times. And sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're irrational fears. So, you know, just ask yourself the question, find a safe space to make the disclosure. You know, sometimes whole families have been uprooted because of this stuff. And, you know, again, it's like I said earlier, sometimes it's not safe to speak straight away, but get yourself to a safe space, then you can speak, or ask some advice, speak to someone who can keep it in confidence to give you the right advice. And well, hopefully the right advice, because these things are very difficult. But, you know, we want to keep kids safe, we keep families safe, and, you know, it's like, and I've written quite a few blogs, you can get them on my website at kellyhumphries.com, but you have to do what's right for your family, but you also need to be seen to stopping the abuse. Like I have many wishes after what I've heard from this last 2 weeks, and you know, like I probably wouldn't want to change anything now, knowing how many people I've been able to, you know, support and help on my journey. But the point is, even if you're wrong, even if it hasn't happened, the opportunity when you know, a disclosure is made that starts a conversation that teaches you about protective behaviours in your own body is better than abuse occurring later, because, you know, the cycle started and it hasn't been able to be stopped. You know, having the conversation, I could have had a conversation with my mum, said, hey, this is what happened, this is what I heard, it's probably wrong, but what does that mean? You know, and so when something did happen, I'd be like, oh my God, that's wrong. So
don't be, because I'm on tender hooks to wait and hear your whole story, because I plan to try and create a resource around it for children. So you know, I think people will learn. Don't ever be sorry, Kel.
No, I won't. I just, yeah, I need to get it right in my head before I put it out there. But it's just made me very very passionate about this topic about bystander silence. So I was even going to say to Holly, so we're not doing this morning. Had a big cry. Don't want to see me get angry. But yeah, anyway, conversation for another day. But look, so there's misunderstandings too. So I'm gonna share a little bit of my story here. That's not about what I want to tell you. This is about what's already happened. But it is the fact that I was resilient, right? Good athlete, really tough, really happy-go-lucky. You would never think there was anything wrong. I was encouraging. I loved my mates. I support everybody. But I was abused from the age of 7 until 15. Nobody would know any other way. My mum was tricked. I was tricked. We're all tricked. But here's happy-go-lucky Kel. Nothing could ever be wrong, right? So we misunderstand that even if a kid's doing really well, we think nothing could possibly be happening to them. So, you know, therefore, if I said something, you know, would you have thought I was lying? Because I did pretty good at making sure that my secret stayed safe. You know, and it's unfortunate, but there wasn't really a bystander except the perpetrator himself who could have said anything in my situation. But I did open my mouth to one person, and I did share, and what's the word? I tested the waters, and that person never said anything when they could have actually also, you know, had a conversation. So we misunderstand a child's resilience and their ability to cope, and think that nothing could possibly happen to that child or be happening to that child. So therefore, you know, there's no abuse.
Kelly, I'm really glad you said that, because the amount of parents that tell me my child would tell me if something was happening.
They would not.
I know. Thank you for saying that. I just want to take you to every parent workshop that I do and stand you out the front and say, they won't tell you. Stop saying that, because of the grooming. And they just assume that, you know, oh, we've got such a close relationship. And I mean, you had a close relationship with your mum. It's, you know,
yeah, that's right.
It's not the fact that it's happens to bad kids or it's, you know, lonely. It's, you know, you just don't know. And to say that it will never happen to my child, or, you know, I'm a good parent, it's not that you're a bad parent. And
no, not at all.
I'm again, that's why I'm so grateful that you're so open, because if people can learn from your story and get the fact that, you know, you were in a loving family. It's not as if...
Absolutely. I even had 2 dads, loving dads, you know, like I had lots of people. It's just that there's a lot of shame that comes. If anyone wants to know, look, well, go this way. The camera's the wrong way around. Unscathed Beauty. Grab my book from my website. Okay, it's got the whole story in there. I'm more raw than I am here. You just get to hear the most up-to-date revelations from me. So, you know, it's pretty powerful. And the grooming thing is just the biggest headbutt that you could possibly experience. Sorry, but that's just how I feel about it. Did not swear publicly. But it is, and it's tough. And you know, don't your kid, just because they say they're going to tell me, they won't, because that's just what it is. It's an emotionally manipulative state of mind, and a predator is good at that. They're going to trick your child, and that's just what happens. So, you know, and right. So yeah, it doesn't have to be. And again, we've talked in the signs of abuse. It doesn't have to be like a physical sign. So you're not always going to know. So you won't think that abuse is occurring, but you have to remember that the Royal Commission, okay, they dealt with 9% of child abuse that happens in institutions. The other 90% is behind closed doors, in families, with someone known to the child. There are 95% of the time, I'm making that statistic up, but is 95% of the time you're not going to see a sign, okay, because it's done by trickery, manipulation. It turns the child into someone who appears to be agreeing to it, but they're not. They're just manipulated. And there's no signs. There's no bruising. There's no marks. There's no, you know, except for this. It comes out in behavior and those things. So go back and watch the signs of abuse. Go back and listen to those things, because, you know, these are the kids that actually really need the help.
Or even that story that I shared from that beautiful mum. There wasn't even any touching. It was just exposure, and he masturbated.
Yeah.
And, you know, that has still impacted on her. So
yeah. Let me just
never going to be a sign about that.
No, let me just rephrase your statement, not just.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Because it's all so different for every child. And
of course.
Yeah, we can't, again, I know I say this, it's like my trauma is textbook 101, but, you know, my thing compared to somebody having someone just expose themselves, I say just, it's not just, but, you know, that could have the same, if not more, debilitating effects on somebody than my stories, so to speak. So we don't rank trauma against each other, because everybody's situation is different. We all have different coping. So, yeah, so again, that whole conversation, that part is just about, don't misunderstand what you see and assume that that child is okay because they don't show any physical signs of abuse. That makes sense. Right. So again, we talked about fears and repercussions of what might actually happen if we speak up. But there's a lot of things we touched on through this so far, but there's the dependence on the individual. So let's say it's a mother and their father is abusing the child. You know, they don't want to speak up because, you know, they're going to lose their family home. They're not going to have the support that they need. They're going to be out on their own, you know, so there's those types of things. So the cost of actually speaking up versus the cost of staying quiet, okay? So the potential for greater harm to occur. And that just means, like, you know, if they say something and let's say the mother goes to the father and say, are you doing this? And they say no, it gets actually worse for the child, right? So that there's things that could happen that if they say that, then, you know, it's gonna be more violent, or, you know, I can't believe you'd speak up, you're gonna get punished now. You know, we can't say what could happen because it could be a million things. But it's why, if you know about this, you don't go to the perpetrator. You go to someone who can help you with the perpetrator, namely someone who's the capacity to do that, which would be a police officer. Okay, so they would make ways to keep you safe until, you know, they could do something around getting the perpetrator out of the home so that you remain safe. So, you know, don't think there's not ways out of it. If you think it's going to get worse by talking to, don't speak to the perpetrator. If you hear that information, that disclosure from a child, you take it elsewhere. Okay. Again, and I talked about the denial, but the guilt or shame about previous silence. And Holly, you actually talked about this before, and you said about the teacher, and again, it could be anyone who's reporting in any institution or organisation, is quite simply that something didn't happen before, so I'm not going to do it again, right? So you might have these children and they're going to continue to come through your training program, your school, your after school care facility, like wherever you are with kids, and they're going to come through and they're going to have trauma patterns. And one week they might have bruises on their leg. Another week they might not come with food. Another week they, you know, might say something to you that they had to stay at their uncle's for a weekend and, you know, had to sleep in his bed, right? That might not raise any concerns to anyone who's not paying attention. But this child who's got repeated trauma, every time you hear something, you have a duty to report that, okay? But let's just say you didn't hear anything about the time before, as Holly said. Doesn't mean that the next week that you don't report it because you think nothing's happened for the first time. What organisations tend to do is build a profile and a case before they act. Okay, so your reporting is actually just filling in puzzle pieces until they have enough evidence to do what they need to do. So please, please, please continue to report. Be diligent in your reporting. Don't miss anything out. Okay, be factual. But if you get a sense from the child's behaviour of something, put it in your reports, you know, but don't be guilted or shamed because nothing happened the time before. Okay, because different eyes look at things all the time and they will see different things in your reporting. So,
and
yeah.
also, Kel, one of the big things that we teach children to do when we teach them to have a safety team is to persist. And we need to persist on behalf of children. So if you make a report, don't just think, oh, I've done it once and that's the end of it. You can keep ringing every week saying, where's it going? Where's it going? And I hate to bring it up because it's still quite raw in Queensland, but, you know, those two little autistic boys that's father was found dead, you know, people had made reports, but, you know, we need to keep reporting. We can't just, you know, report once and then we've done our bit.
No, and again, what the media portrays too, we don't always know what's actually happened. So, you know, you just do what you know you have to do. If it's not sitting right with you, just keep doing it. Keep going. Keep pushing the point. But sit with yourself long enough to be able to communicate why it's bothering you so much. Okay, because there's something that will come out of that. Ask yourself why, and just keep asking yourself. And the answer will reveal itself, and then you'll have that weight, that evidence that you need. So, yeah. So I mean, there's a lot in this, and there's a lot more that we can talk about. But I think we've done a pretty good coverage on what bystander stuff is and reasons why people don't speak up. There's probably a million more that we could talk about, and if you think we've missed something, if you have a question or you're uncertain about something that maybe it's even in your own experience, not necessarily so much, I really wouldn't be comfortable, you know, we're all going to have issues with the system and how the system betrayed us or whatever. We're not here to discuss how organisations run. We've covered the fact that if it didn't sit right or didn't go through first, have a look at how you're reporting, keep reporting. But again, we're just two, as Holly always says, two birds having a yarn about things that matter. But yeah, so just if you don't understand something or you want more information, like happy to try and elaborate or clarify. Or if you think we've missed something vitally important, we can go live again. Guys, we've made this up to help. We can create another live. It's really not a big deal, and happy to give this information out. I'm just going to let you know, so guys, my website is www.kellyhumphries.com. I would love you to share this information. I've been told I should be promoting my stuff when I do these. So Holly, I want you to promote your books and what you do. But guys, I've got my book there. It does go into grooming. It goes into every element of my story. Not my adult stuff that's coming. I'll get to that. But my book is Unscathed Beauty. I am starting to run some programs and courses, but I would love you to join the journey with me through my website. And Holly, if you can just shout out your website and how people can order your books. And we will sign off, and we're going to go live on this next week, guys. So thank you.
Before I do that, I watched an amazing webinar yesterday about ironically, about Bystander for domestic violence. So I'm going to put the link to that video in the notes above when we share it, because it is so similar. And you know, some of my takeaways were, and you know, I need to be careful, sometimes I get a bit blasé about language, but it was about you know, well, why didn't she leave? And that was, you know, they had a really great conversation about that sort of thing. And adults say, well, why didn't the kids tell? And we know it's because of the grooming. So it's really, it goes for an hour, but it's really worth, because it's about Bystander too.
Yeah.
And they're just so similar. So it's really worth watching. But yeah, my website is www.safe4kids.com.au. I've written 5 children's books. I have a parent handbook, and I have also an online parent workshop. That all the resources are on my website, so you'll find them all.
Beautiful. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us again. Any comments, questions, thoughts, please pop them in the feed, and we're going to go live on it next week. Okay. All right. Bless you guys. Thank you for joining us. All right.